Hello and welcome to this tutorial to help you learn more about Workbooks reporting and how to build charts on the back of those reports. Displaying your data visually in a chart is a really great way to help explain the contents of your report and to provide actionable insights into what's going on in your business. Like reports, charts can be added to dashboards or they can be sent out through scheduled emails. Workbooks supports the creation of 4 chart types. Bar charts are probably the most commonly used type of chart, and they're ideal for tracking the performance of individuals or of a team. Bar charts can also include targets, giving a visual representation of progress against that target. Line charts are good for tracking trends over time. These work really well for reports that use split columns because multiple lines can be represented on a single chart for easy comparison. Pie charts allow you to see data as proportions of the total. For example, comparing the source of leads or the type of cases. They can be useful to see where resources may need to be allocated. And the 4th type is a dial chart, which show you where you are against an overall target. For example, the total value of won opportunities against an annual target, or, as shown on the right, the percentage of unresolved support cases. Let's move into Workbooks to create some charts. A Workbooks chart is just another type of view of a report, so to create any type of chart you need to start with the report itself in view mode. On the screen at the moment I've got an opportunity pipeline report that shows the sales rep and the value of their opportunities split by stage. You can only create a chart for a summary view because by their very nature charts need aggregated data in order to work. You start by highlighting the summary view that you want to use, and in my case I've only got one, so it's already highlighted, and then click on Chart this view. This is where you see the 4 choices of the type of chart that you can create, and I'm going to select Create a Bar Chart. Give your chart a name. Notice that the screen is split into 2 columns. From the left-hand side here, you're asked which of the columns do you want to include in your chart. So for me, I'm going to select this net home currency split by stage. Over on the right hand side it asks what you want to label your data, and I'm going to use the drop down here to change this to sales rep. I'm not going to use any of the other fields yet, so I've done minimal changes. I'm just going to click on Create Chart. And you can see we've got a chart showing vertical bars for every opportunity stage for every sales rep. And that's fine, maybe that's exactly what you want. If you're happy with it, you can finish here. Personally, I find this view a little bit busy, so I'm going to click Edit and make a few changes. I talked about the screen being split into 2 columns, and on both sides, on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side, there are advanced options in what we call reveals. And it opens up more choices of things that you can modify within the chart. The exact options that you get within those advanced sections vary depending on what sort of chart you're creating. This left-hand one on a bar chart allows us to change the direction of the bars, as well as giving some options for what's shown on the bars. I'm going to change these to horizontal and tick stacked when more than one data series is used. And that's the only 2 changes that I'm going to make, and I'll click Save and Close so that you can see the effect that those changes have. Bars are now horizontal, just as we requested, and the data for each stage has been stacked. If you like the presentation this way, you can leave things as they are, but if not, you can click Edit again and try some other options. This time I'm going to tick to show the values on mouse over and the Show Grand Total checkboxes, and save the chart. And now as I roll over these bars, I'm getting the amount exactly as I asked for, and in the bottom right I'm getting the grand total. Remember that with charts you can drill into the detail of them. If I left click on the red part of this bar for Tony, I get 3 choices. I can drill into all opportunities at stage 1, just the ones for Tony that are stage 1, or drill into everything that forms this report. Another useful bit of functionality is the ability to temporarily hide sections of the chart by clicking on the relevant part of the legend. For example, if I didn't want to see things at stage 1, I can just click on stage 1 in the legend, and you can see that's immediately removed the red sections of all of the bars. This functionality is toggle off, toggle on, so I can bring them back just by clicking again. If you do plan to use that bit of functionality, you may want to edit your chart to show the actual and visible values so that even when sections of your chart are hidden, you can see the total. I'll show you what I mean. Go back into Edit, and within Advanced, this Show Actual and Visible Values. Now when I click to remove Stage 1, if you look in the bottom right hand corner, I get to see the value of the elements that are showing on the chart at the moment, but also in brackets the grand total if I hadn't removed Stage 1. You can also apply filters to charts using the button up at the top. So for example, I could maybe just look for things where the sales rep is Tony Khan. Or maybe by using net home currency is greater than, I can find those people where the pipeline is more than 500,000, say. Bear in mind though that you can only apply filters based on columns that exist in the underlying report. I can access the underlying report using the button up at the top, Open Report View. In the Advanced section on the right hand side, I can change the orientation of the labels. Here it says they're horizontal, which is fine for me. And I can control the order in which the columns are displayed. So I could, for instance, sort them by the sales rep name, or maybe in ascending order of who's sold the most. You also get the choice of whether or not to show the legend, and if you are showing it, whereabouts on the chart it's positioned. Below that, you've got some choices about the colour palette used. So you could change this. It's on mixed by default, but if I change it to blue-green. And you can also use this checkbox to reverse the palette if you choose. And then finally at the bottom here, you can also introduce vertical and horizontal lines if you want. I'd recommend exploring the settings to try out different combinations. As you've seen, it's really easy to modify your chart once you've created it. Once you're happy with your chart, you can just close it down, and it now forms a view on the report that you can click to at any point. Before moving on to looking at other types of chart, let's have a look at how you can incorporate targets into your bar charts. For this to work, you have to base your chart on a report that includes targets, like the one on the screen at the moment. If you want to learn more about how to get targets into your report, there's a separate tutorial covering that. If I create a bar chart based on this view, on the left-hand side, there is a section that wasn't there before, a targets section. It's because the chart understands that the report we're basing this chart on does include targets. And there are 3 choices here. At the moment it says no, don't show targets. But we have 2 other choices. We've got yes or yes with conditional styling. Let's take the first one first. Click on yes. Not going to change anything else at all. I'm going to click on Create Chart. Now you can see that I've got columns for each salesperson, and they've got a horizontal bar on which represents the target for that rep. So that might be a useful way to show targets, but there are a couple of ways to bring this to life a bit more. The report view on the screen now is exactly the same as the previous one in terms of the sales reps, the amount in pipeline and their targets, but you can see that conditional formatting has been added to this report. There is another tutorial covering conditional formatting, but briefly, if I edit the report and open the amount column, within the Styling tab, conditional styling on targets has been set up, and it's been set up so that anything under 40% shows as white text on a red background. Anything between 40 and 89% is black text on a gold background, and anything above 90% of target is white text on a green background. So I'm going to create a chart based on this view that has the conditional formatting in it, and I'm going to do exactly as I did before. So I've got the right summary view highlighted and click on Chart This View, and I'll choose Create a Bar Chart. As before, I've got the options to show targets and it defaults to no, but if I do exactly what I did before and choose yes and create the chart, this time we've got the 3 columns just as we had before, and they've still got those horizontal bars across them, but they're in different colours. So Alex's one is showing in green, which means that Alex must be over 90% of target. Alison's one is showing in gold, so Alison must be between 40 and 90%. And over on the right hand side, Andy's bar is shown in red, which means that he's below 40% of target. There's another way to show these targets when you've based your chart on a report containing conditional formatting. So if I go back to Edit, go back to Targets, and this time instead of just choosing yes, choose yes with conditional styling. It's the same data, but the output looks quite different. This time you get coloured sections, and the black or grey bar in the middle shows you the actual figure attained, and it finishes in the relevant colour. So again, we can see that Alex is just into the green, Alison's in the amber, the goldy amber colour, and Andy's down here in the red. So that's an overview of bar charts, including targets on them. So let's move on and have a look at how you would create a line chart. Here's a summary report of orders, split by the year of the order and grouped by the month, which gives us 3 columns to plot. Just like we did with the bar chart, make sure that you've highlighted the right summary view on the left-hand side, and then click on Chart This View, but this time we're going to create a line chart. So it looks as if we've only got 1 column that we can select, but remember this is a split column. So in our report it generated 3 columns. So I'm going to choose that. On the right hand side I'm going to change the label column to the one for order month from my report, and without doing anything else I'm going to click on Create Chart. You can see that I've got a line for each year with data points for each month, and you can drill into the report at those data points if you want to and find out more detail. Just as before, you can click Edit and you can modify the settings to change aspects of the chart. Most of the options that you'll see under the Advanced Reveals are the same as the ones that you saw for bar charts, but there is this one on the left hand side that says Fill Space Under Line. I'll just check that one to show you the difference it makes. And there you go. Sometimes, depending how many lines you've got on your chart, it does make it easier if you fill in the space underneath to see what's going on. But that's all about personal choice. I'm going to have a look now at how to create a pie chart, and these are another popular choice. They're very good for visualising the proportions of the total that each segment represents. You can also change them to donuts if you want to, and I'll show you that. The report on the screen at the moment is a summary of sales grouped by product category. So as before, and this should be familiar to you now, highlight the summary view that you want to create the chart for and then click on Chart This View, and we'll choose Create a Pie Chart. For me, I've only got 1 data column I can select, which is the total sales one, but over on the right hand side I'm going to change the label column to product category. And as I've done before, without making any further changes at all, I'm going to click Create Chart and just see what the output looks like. There we go, we've got a fairly simple, but it is a pie chart. You'll notice that it's a little bit difficult to see these segments that are at the back. As I hover over them, they kind of jump out to make it a little bit easier to see. You can also, if you hold down the left mouse, you can rotate these pie charts if you want to. So maybe in a sales meeting it might be easier to bring these more to the front. Remember too that you can also click on elements in the legend to toggle them on or off. So maybe if I was to switch off other and switch off products and maybe services, because they were the bigger sections, it now becomes much easier for me to see the remaining 6 segments. Just as before, you can edit the chart and select different options. I'm going to make this 3D and maybe a donut as well. I'm going to show the grand total and the actual and visible values. And I'm going to change the palette to blue. There we go. And now if I do what I did before, if I switch off other products and services, I can more easily see the remaining 6 sections, but I can also see the grand total, but the value also of the 6 sections that are showing on the screen at the moment. So hopefully you're getting an idea of how versatile these charts can be. Finally, let's create a dial chart. Dial charts are useful in showing overall progress against target. Let's say that we've got a daily support team target to keep unresolved cases under 20% of the cases logged. And the report on the screen at the moment shows the number of open cases, the closed cases, and on the far right, the percentage therefore of unresolved cases. You should be fairly familiar now with the initial steps needed to create a chart. So click on Chart This View and select Create a Dial Chart. For my data column, I'm going to select the percentage of unresolved cases. In the Ranges section on the right-hand side, you select your upper and lower limits. Remember, we're looking at a percentage, so the lower limit will be 0 and the maximum will be 100. Then you specify where you want the breaks to be between red and amber and green and amber. These don't have to be equal segments if you don't want them to be. So I'm going to set my first interval to 20 and my second one to 50. And when I click on Create the Chart now, you'll see what happens. And there we go, we've got a dial chart, and by default the first section is red, then amber and then green, with the dial moving clockwise. However, for us, 76% of cases being unresolved isn't good, so the fact that the dial is over in the green is a bit misleading. But you can change the order of the colours. Also, if you notice, it's quite small, but down at the bottom it says 55. Now that actually represents the number of open cases, but it's not very clear, so let's edit the report to change those two things. With the label column, instead of just accepting the default here, I'm going to type something into the fixed label section, and you'll see the effect that that has in just a moment. And then under Ranges, I'm going to change the order of the colours. I'm not changing the intervals, just the way that they appear on the dial. And click Save and Close. We haven't changed the position of the dial, that's still over towards the right hand side. It still says 76% in the middle, but the needle is now showing in the red area because that's bad for us. And if you look at the text at the bottom, because I typed a fixed value in, it's now telling the viewer that the target is 20% or less, so you really can work out that 76% is not a good place to be for this particular report or chart. So as you can see, this dial makes much more sense now in terms of what we're trying to convey, but if this was a dial about a sales target, you probably would want the green section over on the right, with people working towards pushing the dial into the right hand side of the screen. Here's a quick recap on charts. There are 4 different types of chart that you can create. Bar charts, which can include targets, line charts, pie charts, which can also be displayed as donuts, and dial charts. In each instance, you have to start by highlighting the summary view for which you want to create a chart and then select what type of chart you want. You can't change the type of chart once you've selected it, but it is easy to delete it and start again with a new type if you want to. For each type of chart there are a number of options, like what colour palette to use, whether or not you want to show a legend, and what to call the axes, as well as some advanced options which differ slightly depending on the type of chart, but include things like showing a grand total, making the chart 3D, or changing the direction of bars and labels and so on. My advice would be to experiment with the combination of options to get the output that suits you. Thanks for watching. I hope you found the session useful. For more help on reporting, visit our knowledge base on workbooks.com/help/reporting.